North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. Why are you watching this broadcast? Well, because you're tired of listening to machine media tell you what you should be thinking. What you're looking for is the news, at least that's what I wager, and that's what you find here. We give you the news honestly and fairly. We analyze it for fact and bias. I make commentary, that's not the news. Yeah, it's my opinion, but it's just as valuable as yours, which is why we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. You have a check and balance on this broadcast. If you think, for whatever reason, that I am foolish, that's a word, F-U-L-L-I-S-H. It's in the Wells Report lexicon, sort of like gobbledygookian. If you believe that I am foolish, by all means, join us on the chat room, which you can find at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, or by calling me on the telephone right here. Operator is standing by. And tell me what you think. Because the objective of this is to not have me stand up on the high hill and say, my gosh, this is the way it is. That's Walter Cronkite's gig. I'm just your neighbor. I'm just trying to make sure that you know, based on almost 22 years of experience, what the news is for me. All right. Now, it's not news from me. It's the news. I'm just giving it to you. All right. So let's get together and have more truth at the end of this than we do at the beginning. Like right now, for example, what is happening? So glad you asked. What's happening is this. The House of Representatives, after a contentious last week trying to choose a speaker, have indeed chosen one. It was historic. It happened in the last couple of days, and Kevin McCarthy finally got a coalition of people to agree that he should be the Speaker of the United States. He made a wonderful speech. If you haven't seen it, make sure you see it. He made a wonderful speech about the United States of America. As a matter of fact, I might end up playing it. I think I was planning on playing it, and I'll probably do that in the back half hour of this broadcast. Meanwhile, let's grab the news. So he is going to work to get his party going. He is trying to pass a House rules package. This should happen sometime this evening. The package's proposals include capping spending at the 2022 level for the next 10 years. That is expected to result in significant cuts to existing programs. This has some representatives, Republicans like Tony Gonzalez, worried that defense spending will be slashed. Defense spending does not need to be slashed. However, as Jim Jordan, a Republican who will likely be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, said, everything's got to be on the table. We're $32 trillion in debt. Well, I think the priorities have to be set by reasonable intelligence. And the priorities are that we live in a dangerous world that's only gotten more dangerous over the last couple of years. Just my opinion. That's the difference, by the way. When I'm doing the news and I throw an opinion out there, I tell you it's an opinion. Okay? And absolutely up for debate. 817-379-2172 or the chat room. Anyway, as we talk about this, we can say that defense is something that takes a lot of money. But like it or don't, believe that it should be or not, America is the world's policeman. When we withdraw, the world descends into chaos. We've seen it over and over and over again. Now's not the time to descend into chaos with Iran on the brink of a nuclear weapon. It just isn't the right time. There was a peace dividend, for example, after the Cold War. We actually had an absence of Cold War for about, 90, 120 days. It was euphoria for those of us who lived through it and thought about waking up to the sound or the flash of light from a nuclear weapon destroying our city that we happen to be living in. It was wonderful. There was something called a peace dividend that unfortunately led to a downhill slide that hurt the United States military. We can't do that now. We just can't afford it. And so that's what I think. Just my opinion. Tony Gonzalez says this. This has a proposed billions of dollars cut to defense, which I think is a horrible idea. I agree. This was Representative Gonzalez on Face the Nation on Sunday. When you have aggressive Russia and Ukraine, you've got a growing threat of China in the Pacific. And don't forget, he did in this statement, don't forget the war on terror. You know, I'm going to visit Taiwan here in a couple of weeks. How am I going to look our allies in the eye and say, I need you to increase your defense budget, but yet America is going to decrease ours? Well, first of all, Representative, our defense budget has nothing to do with Taiwan. When the rockets and bullets and jets start flying, believe me, the United States will be there for Taiwan. Absolutely true. Gonzalez said he plans to vote against the rules package, leaving McCarthy's already slim majority even slimmer as he tries to get the rules passed. Representative Nancy Mace also told CBS, I don't want to see defense cuts, saying she was unsure about her support for the rules. Look, I have to agree. Defense is, while, yeah, we're $32 trillion in debt, we got to cut elsewhere. We have to cut elsewhere. We can't cut defense. That's just the way that is. Representative Jim Jordan, who I referenced a moment ago, is expected to lead the House Judiciary Committee defended spending cuts, even for defense. On Fox News Sunday, he pointed to the government's massive debt, saying everything has to be on the table, suggesting military cuts could be made by eliminating woke policies and re-examining aid to Ukraine, allowing the government to focus more on troops and weapon systems. Those billions of dollars sent to Ukraine to fight a war that we don't have anything to do with, that could go a long way in the United States military. I'm just saying. $40 billion here, $40 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. Additional changes to existing rules in the new package, including requiring 72 hours notice prior to voting on new legislation, requiring a 3/5 supermajority in order to pass federal income tax rate increases. Yes. And the formation of a task force to address House ethics reform. By the way, on tax rates, you realize, of course, that we are one vote for a flat tax away from returning the IRS into an agency of public servants as opposed to an agency of public intimidation. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. The rules package also calls for the creation of a House Oversight Subcommittee for investigating the origins of COVID-19, specifically mentioning the U.S. government's involvement in any funding of gain and function research. By the way, just as a little thing here, you know, I've analyzed this for a long time. I've been looking at COVID-19 for a very, very long time. And I'm going to say this gently because it should be said gently. I believe that the reason why the United States has not gone after China with a vengeance on COVID-19 is because, in my suspicion, again, just my opinion, I believe that a lot of the work that led to COVID-19 happened here in the United States, in America's universities, and courtesy of the United States government's National Institute of Health. I believe that is something that's there. And I believe that indeed, if the United States pushes too hard on China, China will simply say, well, we got it from you. In point of fact, they actually didn't get it from us. The machinations are, you know, and the more levels you take this down, the further down the rabbit hole you get. Well, what I would suggest is that there was breakthrough research done on gain of function in the United States at United States University Labs, which was shared with Canada. And I believe the espionage of the Chinese espionage intelligence agencies stole that virus, took it to Wuhan, lost control of it, and I believe that's how this all happened. So stand by for the possibility of U.S. complicity in the creation of, if not the SARS-CoV-2 virus specifically, certainly the SARS-CoV-2 virus family. Just stand by for that. I'm pretty good at this stuff. That's the only thing that really makes sense. By the way, Ann says, by the way, cut all the bogus departments. That's a great idea. I've got a better one. Okay, I'm not going to say it's a better one because that's a subjective statement. How about this? How about what we do is we cut these agencies' enforcement capability? All of them, except for the FBI. All of them. Cut their enforcement capability and force them, if they are a regulatory agency, to get a public up or down vote on the enforcement of anything that they want to do from the United States Congress. put it on television. If I was doing the bill, what I would do is I would say, hey, what you got to do is you got to pass this. You got to pass these regulatory yays and nays during daylight hours on camera so that we know exactly how the EPA is getting all this power. In point of fact, the Congress has delegated a bunch of power to these regulatory agencies to operate as they see fit. That needs to be curtailed to the point of zero. We have to get that done. So by all means, let's do. Call your representatives. I think they'll take your call now. Remember, Nancy Pelosi, when she was running the House of Representatives, wouldn't even take calls from her own membership. No amendments. No ways to make a bill better. Because as far as Nancy Pelosi was concerned, Nancy Pelosi was very, very sure that everything she did was absolute solid gold, and anybody else that would be arguing is just stupid. And that's how she ran the House of Representatives. Fortunately, those days are over. And I'm looking very much forward to exporting Nancy Pelosi to the ambassadorship of Japan and forcing her to get a tramp stamp tattoo that says Made in America. So that, like you remember when you got stuff made in Japan and so on, made in China, that's little fine print, somewhere that you're probably not going to find if you don't go after for a look, right? That's what she needs. She needs a tramp stamp that says Made in America so that the Japanese know what they're dealing with. Too harsh? Anyway, so the rules package is going to be considered today and probably passed tonight. By the way, the IRS is on the chopping block on the first day of legislative work. This, according to Fox News, the House of Representatives is slated to vote on a bill tonight that would, that would cut more than $70 billion in Internal Revenue Service funding in an effort to prevent the agency from conducting new audits on Americans, fulfilling newly elected House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's promise ahead of taking the gavel. That is a great idea. I've got more to say on that. I'm going to do so after the break. The Family and Small Business Taxpayer Protection Act from Representatives Adrian Smith, a Republican from Nebraska, and Michelle Steele, a Republican from California, would roll back billions of dollars of funding for the IRS that was approved in the Inflation Reduction Act last year. By the way, one of the new rules is to have single subject bills. This Inflation Reduction Act, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which was also referred to as Green New Deal Light, right? That was one of those multi-subject bills. You'd like one part of it, so you'd want to vote for that, but you couldn't vote for that because the other part of it had something that was ridiculous, and then somebody would say, well, you voted against this, that, and such and so. Yeah, that's because it was tied together with a bill that forced Americans to live with a full-grown crocodile in their households every day. And yeah, I couldn't vote for that. But you voted against welfare for starving Cocker Spaniels. Yes, I did. Because it was part of a bill that made people have to get a crocodile. So, sorry. Take it or leave it. Single subject bills leaves it. By all means, let's do that. This is the Wells Report. Lots to do today. It's a big day. It's a good show. Stick with it. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. Glad you're here. Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. Taking a look at the chat room. Let's see. Kelly Lyons is saying hi. Kelly, we love you. You take good care. Tell everybody at ODOT I said, hey. See what else? Ann says, how about if we cut the money that supports illegal immigration? Good idea. There are funds that can be cut. Absolutely. Yeah, now we got to take the politics out of it. We keep electing politicians. And that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, there's politics is very expensive. It's a price that the American people really can't afford anymore because they do stupid things. They know that they're spending way too much money up there. That's why they've been working on expanding the IRS. Expansion of the IRS is the last thing that we need to do, in my opinion, the last thing we need to do in these United States. Here is something I alluded to a little while ago. The House of Representatives is slated to vote on a bill tonight that would cut more than $70 billion, close to $72 billion, in Internal Revenue Service funding. You might remember that $82 billion was allocated to the IRS to hire armed IRS collection agents. No, you don't get to do that, especially when you couple it with this annoying proclivity or willingness to trace everybody's bank transactions $600 or more. That's every paycheck for most people, like a vast majority of the people. The government has no need to understand what your paycheck is every week as it goes into your account. They don't need to be watching us like that. That's East Germany. For those people that remember East Germany, it's totalitarian busybodiness. And so the IRS was going to arm and equip 82,000, I believe it is, 82,000 new IRS agents with guns to enforce the so-called law. What they need to do is they don't need to expand the IRS. What they need to do is they need to rely on the good sense of the American people, which we understand we have to pay taxes. It's no problem. Absolutely no problem. Please make it as easy as possible. Okay, let's do a flat tax so that everybody knows exactly what they're going to have to pay. That if you're in a tax bracket that's, say, $250,000 a year or less, you pay 15%. $500,000 or less, you pay 12%. $1 million or less, you pay 10%. $1 million a year and up, you pay 8% up to an individual income tax cap, whatever that would be. $100 million? Since I'll never be in that cap, I don't really have to worry about it. But still, on the other hand, this is just a conversation starter. You'd be able to do your taxes in 20 minutes. Sit down at the kitchen table. Here's my withholding. Here's my income. Here are my W-2s. Here's my income. Here's my withholding. Pay whatever's left. Receive whatever's left. Pay whatever's to whatever you owe. Done. Simple. There's more on this. More on what the House is doing. We're going to be talking about that coming up in just a couple of moments. Look, if we do that, the IRS, it loses 60% of their workforce. The IRS returns to being an agency that serves the American public as opposed to an agency that intimidates the American public. And that's what the IRS needs to be. Now, would I stiffen penalties for people that screw over the IRS when it's that simple? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be a problem. It would be a one-strike rule. One strike, federal misdemeanor. Two strikes, federal felony. Keep your crap together. Don't screw this up. Don't cheat. By the way, there are no deductions. I know. That's another subject for another day. The House is back in session with a speaker. What are they doing? We'll tell you more next. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Feel free to use that telephone number and tell me what you think. This is news, analysis, commentary, and debate. That's the debate part. You can go to the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Let's see. It doesn't make any difference whether President Biden visited the border. We'll be talking about that coming up later on in this edition of the Wells Report. You don't want to miss that either. It doesn't matter whether President Biden visited the border because it accomplished nothing. And points out, yeah, especially since El Paso was all cleaned up. Remember those hundreds of people that were sort of living underneath the bridge, trying to stay warm in the winter and trying to stay cool in the summer and so on and so forth? All those people were gone. Where did they go? Where were they put? All the people sleeping on the streets of El Paso, gone. Where did they go? Where did they go? The duplicity involved in the Democrat policy of immigrants, where they say, my God, Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis and Governor Doug Ducey of Arizona and Texas and Florida, all those guys are sending them to sanctuary cities. We didn't mean being a sanctuary city and inviting people to crash the border of the United States. You know, that's all well and good until they actually show up in our city. What are you doing? Meanwhile, the duplicity is that President Biden is sending those people to cities all over the country. Nobody writes anything about that. It's not a political stunt there. That hypocrisy is something we work to overcome here on this broadcast. The duplicity. And duplicity is dangerous when it comes to American governmental policy. Well, it's dangerous when it comes to any governmental policy, ever. And so we're trying to iron some of that out. Let's see. I'm getting to the chat room. Why arm the IRS? They're powerful. They can take your home, your car, your business, bank accounts. Why do they need firearms? Obviously, not enough government bureaucrats shoot themselves in the feet. And so that's what they need. Yeah, there was a picture. There was a picture of the IRS agents that were undergoing training in Quantico, to be able to carry weapons. Those people need one more thing, one prerequisite before they start carrying weapons. That's called a stairmaster. All right, I'm just saying. Let's see. Poker says a flat tax is fat. Take two. A flat tax is too easy. Congress can't mess around with our finances that way. They can't punish the wealthy with all the rates and rules they have if there's a flat tax. Correct. One vote away from returning the IRS to a circumstance that serves the public instead of intimidates them. I want to offer, this is Mark Spencer, BMP. I want to offer promotion to your channel. Viewers, followers, views, chatbots. The price is lower than any other competitor. The quality is guaranteed to be the best. Auto on, incredibly flexible and convenient order management panel. Everything in your hands. Turn it on, off, customize. Go to dogehype.com. Thanks. I'll consider it. Let's see. It does lay the groundwork for 2024. However, it'll put them on the record with votes too. Yes. This Congress needs to be held accountable for their voting. Let's see. Where Biden went to visit was a Potemkin village. Yes. It was political theater. They cleaned up El Paso from one side of the city to the other. And then the president walked through and says, hey, that's not a problem. Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes called the speaker debate a nationwide embarrassment. What a load of leftist crap. Absolutely. It is a load of leftist crap. We're going to get to that right now, in fact. So Speaker McCarthy is now Speaker McCarthy finally, and Speaker McCarthy had to make some deals. Here are some of the deals he had to make. We've already talked about the fact they'll be voting on the rule package tonight. It's going to be contentious. We'll see if they are able to get it through. What is the rules package? They are the rules of the House, a series of powerful guidelines that determine how the lower chamber operates, could even decide how long McCarthy remains as House Speaker. There is something in there that returns the House of Representatives back to the way it used to operate before Nancy Pelosi, BP before Pelosi, which is that one member of Congress could stand up and say, I want a vote of confidence on the speaker. That's a constraint. It is a necessary one. Now, just because somebody stands up and says, I want to vote on the fitness of the speaker, they still have to vote. They still have to vote. And I don't think Kevin McCarthy is in danger of losing the speakership based on those circumstances. Anything that these people have been saying is just pure disinformation, talking points because of the political machine. Nancy Pelosi did something that the political machine really, really loves. Uniparty enforced singular demands on the way people live in America. Nancy Pelosi was the closest thing that we had to a dictator in the United States up until now. Let's see, what's the McCarthy deal? All right. In addition to remove, now, by the way, one of the first things that Kevin McCarthy said in a brilliant speech after he became the Speaker of the House was he removed, actually, it happened before the speech. Republicans removed metal detectors around the floor of the United States House. They ended proxy voting, which had allowed members to cast their decisions remotely. It wasn't proxy voting. What it was go ahead and vote for me, Speaker Pelosi. I'll live with whatever you do. Hardline conservatives pushed McCarthy into an agreement on several changes. First, the motion to vacate, which is what I just talked about, a vote of confidence for the Speaker. McCarthy agreed to restore the motion to vacate, allowing one member to call for a vote to remove him. More seats for the Freedom Caucus. House Freedom Caucus members will receive 3 of 9 seats on the House Rules Committee. Great. That has a big say on whether bills and amendments are brought to the floor. Yes, that is a great thing. What that does is it breaks down an essential tool of the swamp. At least 3 votes. That's reasonable. The end of omnibus voting bills or financing bills. McCarthy agreed to vote separately on spending bills, such as agriculture and defense, instead of having them bundled in a massive omnibus like the $1.7 trillion one that just passed a few weeks ago. Lower spending. The deal will cap spending at the levels from 2 years ago, which will mean cuts to most programs. Good. Stay away from defense, please. Okay, that's my thing. Investigating the investigators. McCarthy agreed to a judiciary subcommittee that will focus on the weaponization of the federal government, investigating the FBI, Department of Justice's raid at former President Donald Trump's Florida estate Mar-a-Lago, and the related DOJ probe into his handling of classified documents. In other words, political use of the DOJ. They still haven't laid a glove on the former president. They still haven't. I doubt they ever will. It's one of the problems with trying to go after a guy that has a reputation for being kind of a flim-flam artist, a raconteur, a guy who will push the envelope. Yeah, there's a big difference between that and criminal activity. And just because you're a politician sitting in a high seat with a camera on you and a microphone in front of your face doesn't mean that because you think that Donald Trump is some kind of arch nemesis to fairness, you got to prove it. So far, whiff. Lower spending, we already talked about. Investigating the investigators, we already talked about. They really need to get in there and clean up those executive branch law enforcement agencies and the intelligence agencies and the taxation industry or agency and all of those things. They need to do that. Let's see what else. Fewer contested primaries. Speaker McCarthy agreed to keeping his Central Congressional Leadership Fund PAC money out of races against conservative members in safe districts. That was a biggie. That should be called the McConnell rule. Yeah, McConnell can sit there and say, I just don't happen to believe that particular candidate is of sufficient quality. And what he's done is he's built a Republican caucus in the Senate that is the greatest collection of quality losers in the history of American government. They're losers. Republican support passed the $1.7 trillion omnibus, taking the ability to debate every single budget item, all 12, away from the new House. That was a nasty slap at conservatives in the House of Representatives that finally stood up to the establishment and got some power. They restored they want to restore the Holman Rule. The Holman Rule will be reinstated, which allows amendments to reduce lawmakers' salaries, fire federal employees, and cut programs. More time for review, the 74-hour review to give House members more time to review bills before they reach the floor. Now, what I want to know is from you, which of those roles is controversial and is a threat to democracy? Because that's what Leslie Stahl, Poker Monkey, said. That's what Leslie Stahl said, that it was a nationwide embarrassment to curtail the freewheeling spending of the House of Representatives, the freewheeling use of totalitarian rulemaking for the sake of Nancy Pelosi's ego. That's somehow a nationwide embarrassment? No, the nationwide embarrassment is the mainstream media upholding and sustaining all of that miscreancy from the government of the United States. They said it was absolutely reasonable to put 26,000 armed troops with real weapons of war behind barbed wire and fencing around the Capitol building. All that broken down by Kevin McCarthy, who understands that if you don't want people with pitchforks and torches coming to the Capitol, maybe you shouldn't be doing things that require people to respond in the United States with pitchforks and torches. Maybe what you should do is you should actually listen to the people that you're the speaker of, the Congress. Maybe you should listen to those people and stop passing laws that absolutely scare, annoy, and anger the American people. That way you don't have anything to worry about. Good for Kevin McCarthy for that. Yeah, good for him. That was good. All right, so what of those rules is a threat to democracy? The answer is none of them. None of them. Yeah, what about Senator Chip Roy? Chip Roy was an amazing guy through all this. He was really, really good. All those people that said these people are just trying to feather their political nest. It's all about them. It's all about their ego. No, it was about public service. It was about representing we, the people of the United States. That's what that was all about. That's what that was all about. And so Leslie Stahl, indeed, goes absolutely crazy. What do you mean we're going to get rid of all the totalitarian rules that Nancy Pelosi was living on for all of her tenure in the House of Representatives? What do you mean? Welcome to America, Ms. Stahl. It's a country that's given you a lot. Maybe what you should do is give back a little bit. Like, for example, curtailing your totalitarian apologism. Maybe that's what you should do. Stop apologizing for totalitarian rule. Stop apologizing for people violating their oaths of office to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. How about you return to being an American? It's a great place. It's really a great country. It truly is. Why don't you stop crapping on it every chance you get? How about that? Speaking of that, by the way, I normally don't talk about The View because I'm really not into distaff liberal females yakking about anti-American activity, which is what they do. But listen to what they said. Sonny Hostin, Sarah Haynes flipped out over the Speaker of the House vote, claiming that the entire country was held hostage. And those conservative members of the Freedom Caucus acted like thugs on the House floor. You know what was really interesting about that? At least from my viewpoint, and I watched every single vote. The only thuggery was when one of the moderate Republicans wanted to punch Matt Gaetz in the face and was restrained. It wasn't the conservatives standing for their principles, and I understand. I really do understand. Leftist journalists have no principles except the principles of the WAD, the leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, crazy people that want to turn this into the USSA, the United Socialist States of America. Referring to Mike Rogers of Alabama lunging at Matt Gaetz during a heated exchange on the floor, Hostin declared it's so uncivilized when he's like lunging at him and grabbing at him. Yeah. What'd you think of those BLM riots in 2020, Ms. Hostin? I just want to know. What'd you think of those? Was that thuggery at all? Lunging at him and grabbing him? The Republicans used identity politics and like to talk about thugs a lot. They like to talk about other people. I saw a lot of thuggishness going on. I saw thugs at work. I saw this uncivilized nature. It's so, totalitarianism. It's really amazing. Governments in totalitarian countries, they all sit there and clap and smile in unison. Yeah, it's only a fight when people have different points of view. Why do people fear different points of view? Why is that? We don't want everybody just voting in lockstep. We've had enough of that, so we have $32 trillion in debt. Oh, yeah, it's comfortable. Yeah, it's comfortable having somebody else tell you what to think and what to do. Oh, it's comfortable. It really saves a lot of mental energy to actually defend freedom in your own bailiwick. But you know what? That's not freedom and liberty, and therefore not America. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells, a dear friend of the broadcast. Jesse is in New Orleans. There's problems in New Orleans. There are problems in New Orleans. It is now officially the number one murder capital of the United States. Jesse, you be careful there. I used to live there. It was a rough and tough city then, but it's nothing like it is now. New Orleans is a dangerous place. Please be careful. All right. Let's see here. Not everybody agrees. Not everybody agrees about the Freedom Caucus members, the 20 Freedom Caucus members that stood in the way. Anhoy Guzman says that Matt Gaetz is a jerk. And there are lots of great arguments for the truth of that statement. Matt Gaetz can be annoying. She goes on to say, let's see, she goes on to say that she just believes that Matt Gaetz was one of those guys that really didn't do the right thing. Okay, I got that. And there are a lot of, like I said, there are a lot of good reasons why that argument holds up. But the thing about it is this. When it comes to groupthink, when it comes to the perversion of the House of Representatives, anybody who stands up against that is going to take some arrows. And you don't stand up against something like that until you're ready to take those arrows. They're going to hurt. People are saying that Matt Gaetz is now the enemy of Speaker McCarthy. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's going to hold McCarthy accountable, just like the rest of the members of the Freedom Caucus. That is a very good thing for the people of the United States, especially conservative voters. Conservative voters have been essentially lied to by the Republican Party. They just say, yes, you're absolutely right. And then they go on about their business. I've said several times we have two political parties, one that operates in spite of the people of the United States and another that simply ignores the people of the United States. I've said that over and over and over again. And these people stood up to that. And that's what had to happen. People say over the weekend, the only problem that this was Dan Crenshaw, in fact. Dan Crenshaw said, hey, this could have happened a week ago. No, it couldn't have happened a week ago. How do we know? I almost called her the wrong name again. Lauren Boebert, the representative from Colorado, Lauren Boebert gave Speaker McCarthy everything he needed to do to secure votes for Speaker. And she said that he smugly rejected all of them. Okay. Everybody forgets when they say that Matt Gaetz is a jerk, that Lauren Boebert is a jerk, and blah, 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 blah. They also forget that if that is the standard of jerkiness, Kevin McCarthy is right there. He didn't want to give up all the extra power, the Pelosi power that was carved out of the House of Representatives. He didn't want to give that up. And I can see why, especially if his motives are good ones. He didn't want to give up the opportunity to be able to just say, this is the way it's going to be. But that's not the way the House of Representatives works. I said that if you want to lead the House of Representatives, Mr. Speaker, you have to provide the leadership required of it. He finally got around to doing it. I read you the concessions that were made for him to get the votes from the conservative members of the Freedom Caucus. None of those are weird. None of those are wrong. All of them are just right down the center line, and I agree with all of them. I think most people do. Eddie says, I think Dan Crenshaw is a jerk. Well, when you call good and true Americans willing to put their entire lives and reputations on the line for the opportunity to sit in Congress and represent their constituents, calling them terrorists, that was over the flipping line, Representative Crenshaw. He apologized for it. He did. And then he went on to say, well, all of this could have been taken care of a week ago. No, if it could have been taken care of a week ago, it would have been taken care of a week ago. Even leftist column opinion people said, a lot of this has to do with Kevin McCarthy creating this mess himself. It's true. He needed to do the right thing. Threatening these people was the wrong thing to do. He did that. Saying I deserve this job was the wrong thing to do. No, you don't deserve anything. You are elected by your peers to lead them. I mean, it's absolutely true. Any football team, any baseball team, any hockey team, Any basketball team has a captain. The players vote on those offices. Well, that's what the Speaker of the House is. And so, yeah. Matt Getz, yeah, he's a jerk. Dan Crenshaw, yeah, he might be a jerk. Lauren Boebert, yeah, she might be a jerk. But you know the thing about it is, what the Republican Party has proven for decades is that nice guys finish last by choice. We can't allow those people to make that choice anymore. Sometimes you just got to throw a good stiff right cross. And I'm glad they did it. This is the Wells Report. Back with hour number 2 in just a moment. We're going to play Kevin McCarthy's speech in total. That's something I think we ought to do, and we're going to get it on the record next. Stay put. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. What do? We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. There is commentary that is not the news, simply my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. How do you do that? Well, you go to the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And so you can do that, or you can call me on the telephone at 817-379-2172. So let's talk a little bit about that chat room. Lauren Boebert barely got elected in a heavily Republican district. Well, there are not really many heavily Republican districts in Colorado these days because so many Californians have moved to Colorado. It's the Californication of the United States. That being said, she also received no help from Speaker McCarthy's political action committees from a standpoint of money. And so she has no real need to support Congressman McCarthy for the speakership. And so that's a situation that you got to keep in mind. Let me double check something here. Yeah, I'm getting a phone call, and I got to make sure it's not the executive producer. It's not. Good. That's fantastic. Anyway, because I screwed up last week and I don't want to do it again this week. Heard from the boss. Don't want to do that again. So let's see what else. Transparency is a good thing. Yes, let's hope we see a lot more of it. Okay. Ann says, I don't have a problem with rule changes except for the demands of specific personnel and and who goes to which committee. Yeah, I got that. Well, once again, to break down the swamp omelet, sometimes you got to break some eggs. McCarthy was going to run them over, but he didn't produce a red wave. With the obvious weaknesses in the Biden administration, we should have had both houses. That's a tired business model. Well, Eddie, the thing about that is that you're leaving out Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is a loser. This, in my humble opinion, he's a loser. He likes losing. He's good at being a loser. He gets to sit back and talk about how the people that are actually leading the House or the Senate are such jerks and such terrible people. But he doesn't have to pick up that mantle of leadership and actually be the guy that's taking shots from the peanut gallery. He's a peanut gallery guy. And he is not going to help elect anybody in the United States Senate who are Republicans that aren't peanut gallery guys. This is the difference. This is what has to be broken down by the Republican Party. Leadership intransigence, willing to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Right? Let's see. See, I got caught by Mike Renwee. He says, John David, I really like that tie. Yeah. He says, it reminds me of the Rush Limbaugh ties, which he owns several of. Well, This tie is, it's a Jerry Garcia tie. And Jerry Garcia ties are really, really good. And so, but Jerry Garcia, noted leftist crazy person. Anyway, he did come up with great tie designs, and I really, really like them. And so this proves indefatigably that I am not partisan. By the way, that's true. I'm American. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm an American. I'm a constitutional conservative. Did I used to be a member of the Republican Party? Sure. And then I realized that they're losers. I want to align myself with winners. Okay, that's just the way it is. Not saying that Jerry Garcia is a winner. Certainly not politically, but certainly from a standpoint of really cool ties. And yeah, I decided to ditch the jacket. I decided that I can be just a little more youthful looking by leaving the jackets in the closet. So I'm going to try this look. If you like it, great. If you don't, okay. So there you go. Jeez, I just admitted that I wear Jerry Garcia ties. Will the show survive it? That's up to you. You make the decision. But it is a snazzy tie. So let's get back to work. I want to play. I was planning on doing this and I forgot when I was doing. You see, this is an up to the minute news broadcast, and this, by the way, happened 2 days ago. Okay, and so when I get into this studio and I start going through all the news, it's a big job, by the way. When I start going through all the news and so on and so forth, I think about what's going on today. This happened a few days ago, but it's still something that we need to spend a little bit of time dealing with, because this was, and I don't care whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican or what have you. My wife, as it turns out, is a Democrat, but she's a real Democrat. She's not a leftist. And even then, she just refused to have anything to do with anything that Newt Gingrich said. And I didn't try to evangelize for Newt Gingrich with my Democrat wife. What I did was I said, just listen to what he's saying. Let's discuss the stuff that you think are outlandishly silly. Let's do that. And she went, that kind of makes sense. Yes, from an American standpoint, not necessarily a leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American thug standpoint, but from an American standpoint. So regardless of whether you're a supporter of Kevin McCarthy or whether you're a detractor of Kevin McCarthy, whether you appreciate the fight that led to his speakership or don't, listen to these words. I think you'll be heartened by what you hear. That was a good moment, by the way. This is Hakeem Jeffries, who is the leader of the Democrats.
Solemn responsibility to hand over the people's gavel to a son of Bakersfield, a former small business owner, a proud product of a firefighter's household, the gentleman from the great state of California and the next Speaker of the 118th Congress, Kevin McCarthy.
That was a good moment. Kevin McCarthy refers to the Democrat leader in his speech. And steps up to the plate. Let me show you what that looks like. Thanks to C-SPAN for getting this and giving us the opportunity to take their feed of the contentious floor debate and contentious floor votes that led to this moment.
That was easy, huh? I never thought we'd get up here. Thank you, Minority Leader Jeffries. Hakeem, I've got to warn you. 2 years ago, I got 100% of the vote from my conference.
Yeah, times change.
There's somebody else I want to thank. The gentlelady who served as our presiding officer this week, our clerk, Cheryl Johnson.
She did a great job. She did a great job. She did. It was a tough job. It was mainly scripted. The House parliamentarian over her shoulder, telling her what was next and what to say and handing her notes. But she did a great, great job. Well done. Well done.
You know, my father always told me, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And now we need to finish strong for the American people. You know, if a son of a fireman and a grandchild of immigrants can rise to the highest position in the most important legislative body in our country. And if my colleague, Hakeem Jeffries, with his life story, can rise to lead his party, then opportunity and democracy still thrive in America.
Good words. Well said.
To Leader Jeffries, there will be times we agree, and many times we will differ. I promise our debates will be passionate, but they will never be personal. That's my commitment to you. Now, the hard work begins. What we do here today, next week, next month, next year, will set the tone for everything that follows. Tonight, I want to talk directly to the American people. As Speaker of the House, my ultimate responsibility is not to my party, my conference, or even our Congress. My responsibility, our responsibility, is to our country. Two months ago, you voted for a new direction for our country. You embraced our commitment to America. And now we're going to keep our commitment to you. It's a commitment for an economy that's strong, where you could fill up a tank of gas and feed your family, where paychecks grow and not shrink. It's a commitment for a nation that's safe, where communities are protected, law enforcement is respected, and criminals are prosecuted. Commitment for the future that's built on freedom, where children come first and are taught to dream big. Because in America, dreams can still come true. A commitment for a government that is held accountable, where Americans get the answers they want, need, and deserve. Our system is built on checks and balances. It's time for us to be a check and provide some balance to the president's policies.
Kevin McCarthy, who is very seriously talking as he accepted the speaker's gavel a couple of days ago. We will bring the entire speech to you because this is a speech everyone needs to hear. Whether you agree with Kevin McCarthy, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're not, makes no difference. Because if indeed you are anti-Kevin McCarthy, and a lot of people are on both sides of the aisle, you still need to hear what he has to say about what he wants to do as Speaker. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Speaker McCarthy, his speech after taking the speaker's vote, finally, after a contentious group of votes, 15 in fact, speaking to the people of the United States. Let's get back to that.
There is nothing more important than making it possible for American families to live and enjoy the lives they deserve. That is why we commit to stop wasteful Washington spending, to lower the price of groceries, gas, cars, housing, and stop the rising national debt. We pledge to cut the regulatory burden, lower energy costs for families, and create good-paying jobs for workers by unleashing reliable, abundant, American-made energy. I know the night is late, but when we come back, our very first bill will repeal the funding for 87,000 new IRS.
Let's hope that passes.
You see, we believe government should be to help you, not go after you. We're going to pass bills to fix the nation's current challenges, from wide open southern borders to American last energy policies to woke indoctrination in our schools.
We'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the Wells Report as well. Make sure you stick with us.
We'll also address America's long-term challenges, the debt, and the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. Congress must speak with one voice on both of these issues. This is why we will end wasteful Washington spending. From now on, if a federal bureaucrat wants to spend it, they will come before us to defend it. As for the Chinese Communist Party, we will create a bipartisan select committee on China to investigate how to bring back the hundreds of thousands of jobs that went to China, and then we will win this economic competition. Now, speaking of committees, we will hold the swamp accountable. From the withdrawal of Afghanistan to the origins of COVID and to the weaponization of the FBI.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who is someone who just took the speaker's gavel, this is his speech when he took that gavel Saturday night. And we will see just exactly how that works. I really want to make sure that people understand that this is a turning point for the people of the United States. And I also want to address that once again, we have a Republican talking about really good things. Not only is he going to have to get everything that he wants to get done through the Senate of the United States, he's also going to have to get it through Mitch McConnell. And with the passage of the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that Mitch McConnell made possible, that is going to be a tall order. More about that in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We are playing Kevin McCarthy's speech when he took over as Speaker of the House. It's a great speech. Whether you agree with his politics or not, this is something you need to pay attention to, in my humble opinion. So we'll continue with this speech as Kevin McCarthy talked about his vision for the United States of America.
As for the Chinese Communist Party, we will create a bipartisan select committee on China to investigate how to bring back the hundreds of thousands of jobs that went to China, and then we will win this economic competition. Now, speaking of committees, we will hold the swamp accountable. From the withdrawal of Afghanistan to the origins of COVID and to the weaponization of the FBI. Let me be very clear. We will use the power of the purse and the power of the subpoena to get the job done.
Democrats sitting with their hands folded as Speaker McCarthy talks about reining in the federal government.
This is something we should all agree upon. We will stand up and speak out for the backbone of our economy, the hard-working taxpayer. It's nighttime here in Washington. But in some ways, it's also like a new beginning, a fresh start. My friends, this chamber is now fully open for all Americans to visit.
This was something that the Republicans did. They took the metal detectors away from the entrances to the House chamber, and they reopened the Capitol for Americans to visit. Long overdue. Good job, in my view.
I want to give all Americans a personal invitation. You are welcome to see this body at work. No longer will the doors be closed, but the debates will be open for you to witness what happens in the people's house. From the committee rooms to this floor, we commit to pursue the truth passionately and embrace debate. No more one-sided inquiries. Competing ideas will be put to the test in public so that the best ideas win. But we also pledge to bring Congress to the people, because answers have not and will not always be found in Washington. That's why one of our very first hearings will be held on the southern border.
Again, Democrats sitting with their hands folded.
No more ignoring a crisis of safety and sovereignty. We must secure our border. We must get America back on track. Now, on a personal note, to my family, here and at home, to Judy, Megan, Connor, Emily, my brother Mark, Monica, Zach, and yes, my mom Bert. I am where I am because you are who you are. You can stand. I'd also like to thank my constituents in California's Central Valley. Yes, and especially my hometown of Bakersfield. I don't know if you're familiar with music, but as Buck Owens sings, how many of you that sit and judge me have ever walked the streets of Bakersfield? Well, I've walked those streets my entire life. I know its people. They're hardworking and relentless, optimistic about our future. And I'm very honored to have the opportunity to represent them. I am a son of a firefighter. I saw firsthand what it means to have hard work, leadership, and service to others can change people's lives. And that is exactly why we are here today, to serve you, the people. We come here with the support of our families and the faith of our neighbors to be their voice in Washington. For all the wives and husbands, children and parents who are watching, a loved one to be sworn in, I knew it took a couple extra days. I'll be honest, it's not how I had it planned. I want you to remember this moment. Take it in. Your loved ones are about to make history. My colleagues and I thank you for your understanding and your sacrifice. And we will work every day to make you proud. My most favorite spot in this building is not in this chamber. It's in the chamber they met before, in Statuary Hall. My favorite place to take people on a tour. See, it's where Abraham Lincoln served. He was just a one-term congressman, sat in the back. I like to go to that spot and I like to stand where he stood. I like to do it at night when people aren't around. I like to look over and look at the clock, because that's the same clock and same view that Abraham Lincoln saw. I've watched Lincoln serve in the greatest challenge to our Constitution, the Civil War. I watched him take peoples who were rivals and put them together. I watched at a time that he did not know if a nation could sustain itself, but he dreamt of a future and built a railroad across the nation. I want us to all take a moment one time that you are here. I want you to stand there. I want you to look. And I want you to think. America could do it then. We can do it now one more time. You know, Abraham Lincoln gave his life in service to this country. One of his most important observations about America applies today, as much as it did 160 years ago. He said, "We are striving to maintain the government and institutions of our fathers and to transmit them to our children and our children's children forever." My fellow Americans, that is still our mission today. This moment calls for restoring trust within our country and with each other. In that spirit, I will work with anyone and everyone who shares our passion to deliver a better future for the nation. I hope you'll join me. As a Congress, we can only operate if we cooperate. My door will be open. I'd like you to come by. I want you to see, as you walk down the hall, a large portrait of Lincoln. I want you to go into that conference room. I want you to see another portrait. My members know of this. It's of Washington crossing the Delaware. You all know the story. It happened on Christmas, 1776. There was no iPhone to take a picture. People wonder when it was painted. It wasn't painted by someone who was there. It was painted in 1850 and 1851. He was an immigrant who lived in America, amanuensis. You know why he painted it? Because he knew America was more than a country. America was an idea. He went home to Germany, and he wanted Germany to have a revolution based upon the values and freedoms that we defend every day. His talent was art. So he believed if he painted this painting, he could inspire his countrymen to rise up for the idea of freedom. Well, many historians will tell you he didn't get it correct. They'll tell you Washington crossed on a Durham boat, but he paints it with Washington in a rowboat. You see 13 people, but only 12 faces. You see Washington standing up in a rowboat in the middle of winter, wearing a ceremonial uniform with his hand on his chest. He looks so stoic. You would look at that man, you'd say, I'd follow him anywhere. You probably believe that he never lost a battle. But history would tell us at that moment, at that time, he had only lost. We had never won. You see, that was the night of our first victory as a nation when we surprised the Hessians. But when you look at that painting, don't look at Washington. I want you to look at who's in the boat. You see, the second rower in the beret, he's Scottish. The person directly across from him in the green, rowing in the exact same cadence, is an African American. You come down right to the middle in the red, the person who's rowing the strongest is a woman. And in the very back is a Native American. I don't know from a historic fact if they were in the boat that night, but to this young immigrant who had lived in America, that's who he believed would be in the boat. The second to last person is a farmer. He could be from Bakersfield, I'm not sure. His hand goes across his face. People will debate this part. But what I see is a hand of the 13th person nobody sees. You see, what I believe Emmanuel was saying is, here we are, battling for the creation of the idea of freedom. That every individual is equal. Not a perfect nation, but striving to be a more perfect union. Having lost every battle against the greatest challenge with the strongest nation. Having lost them all, but willing to do it on our holiest of nights, with a hand reached out and asking if you would join us. That's as true today as it was then. If we let everybody in the boat, if we row in the same cadence together, there is no obstacle this body can overcome for this nation.
He misspoke there. He forgot to put a double negative in there. There is no obstacle this body cannot overcome for this nation. but still, people knew what he was saying.
It is time for us to be the voice and worthy of their vote. Let me close with this. I may not know all of you, some of you are new, but I hope one thing is clear after this week. I never give up.
That is Kevin McCarthy accepting the gavel as Speaker of the House of Representatives. A very well done speech, and one that I sincerely hope will be one that the American people both hear, appreciate, understand, and hold the Speaker accountable for. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We bring you analysis. We bring you commentary and debate. It's what we do every single day, Monday through Friday, from 2 until 5 Central Time, 3 to 6 on the East Coast, noon to 3 on the West Coast. Mountain Time, somewhere in between, depending on what state you're in. It is the Wells Report, and thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast. I was very impressed with our government, even through the difficult votes of last week. I was impressed with the Speaker's speech, and all I can say is the following. It is wonderful that Kevin McCarthy is able to say these things so well, to put out for the American people the ideas he believes should guide American governance for the next 2 years. But as a former Republican, made so by the intransigence of American Republicans to do anything beyond talk a good game, I want to agree with something that was brought up on the chat room. Don't tell me, show me. A quote from the great Rush Limbaugh. He was from Missouri, and that's the show me state. All of us who believe in this nation, who believe in this speakership, who believe in this House of Representatives, should adopt the same mantra. Show me. Don't tell me. Show me. And to that end, I have to point out something that the Republican Party, the bed the Republican Party has made for itself. They're really good at talking and not real good at following through. We will repeal Obamacare the next opportunity we have. They said that 73 times in the Republican Party in front of all of us. When they got their chance, they blew it. They blew it. The House didn't have a plan. The Senate didn't have a way to corral John McCain. And they blew it. That is the ignominious. There's another word for you there, Gary. That's the ignominious bed. That's the nest that they have feathered for themselves. And being able to put all these things out there, well, I doubt very sincerely that a lot of things will ever see the light of day insofar as they are not the only voice in the United States. They do have the power of the purse. I certainly hope they use it. I certainly hope they defund the 87 million new IRS agents. They're going to vote on that tonight after they have a rules vote that Republicans have to agree on. There have been a couple of Republicans who said, nope, I don't like the new rules because I'm not actually a Republican. They're not saying that. That's just sarcasm on my part. But anybody who doesn't vote for these rules has another agenda. What is that agenda? And I don't care whether you agree with that agenda, that other agenda, or not. But I do care whether they're held accountable for it by the voters of their districts. And so I am reasonably sure that the conservative members of the Freedom Caucus who held this vote up until they got something to defray, to actually begin to erode the American swamp and the American political machine that nourishes it. I am hoping that what we have is we have people that will continue to both stand for their opinions, stand for their beliefs and principles, but yet do understand that it's not about them. It is about where this country goes and what the American people have asked for. I don't like lockstep anything. I don't like iron fist rule. I don't like any of that. And these people took the opportunity to break that down. But I do hope the House of Responsibility, House of Representatives, I hope what they do is they pass these commitment to America items. And then I hope what the American people do is pay very close attention to just exactly who votes against those principles. That's not going to be easy because the Senate of the United States is really, really good, especially Republicans, really, really good at evading accountability for their decision making. Very good at it. Because these principles, these voted on principles, these passed from the House will have to go to the Senate where they face not just opposition from Democrats, but also opposition from Mitch McConnell Republicans. And then once they get through all of that, it's going to have to be signed by the President of the United States. This will be used in 2024 for the Republican Party to ask for more power. And the same decision-making that we had to make to get to this point will have to be made again. Do we trust these Republicans to get this hard work done? if we give them more power, will they be able to use it in the manner that we see fit? And once again, the ignominious negative nest feathering of Republicans shrinking from their responsibilities in the Senate of the United States, not once but twice. Well, they're going to have to overcome that. Is that enough for them to be defeated? Yeah. Will they be defeated? I certainly hope not. But if they are defeated, it's going to be because of their own policy making and their own lack of follow through. That's why I'm not a Republican. This is the Wells Report. Hour number 3 is next. God bless you guys. I hope you're enjoying this show. I hope you like my shirt. We'll be back with more in just a minute. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary that is not the news. Just my opinion. Just as valuable as yours. So share it. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. So we'll see what the House of Representatives does. There are important votes coming up. If you missed any of the show up to this point, by all means, please do go back and take a look at hours number 1 and 2. I think you'll find something that heartens you. We'll cross our fingers and hope for the best. And so we have an interesting, well, shall we say, mosaic of things surrounding our former president, Donald J. Trump. A Georgia grand jury has completed their work in a probe tied to the 2020 election, and the Georgia grand jury involved has completed that work, and the findings will be considered for public release. I want to make sure that that hasn't happened yet. Let me double check something very, very quickly. I had a technical break that I had to take care of earlier, so I wasn't able to do this. Let's see, Georgia ORGIA grand jury. Georgia grand jury. Let's see if the judge has unsealed any of this. Let's see. They've completed it. Yeah. So nothing has happened yet, but we'll discuss it. Let me give you the report from USA Today. A special grand jury in Georgia impaneled in the far-reaching fraud investigations involving President Donald Trump and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. By the way, that's bias. Remember, this is USA Today. They are biased left, and so we point that out. So their findings are set to be considered for public release later this month, according to a judge. In a brief court filing, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney noted the grand jury, seated in May, was being dissolved and set a January 24th hearing to determine whether or not the panel's report, including possible recommendations for criminal charges, would be made public. Special purpose grand juries do not have the authority to issue indictments. That power rests with the Atlanta Area District Attorney, Fannie Willis, who's been overseeing the panel's work, is expected to decide whether criminal charges will be pursued again against President Trump and a number of his aides and associates. Now, this is punishment for the president, upending the swamp and, yes, the political machine that sustains it in these United States. So far, they have not been able, anybody chasing President Trump, they have not been able to sustain their ideas about trying to see a former president indicted. They will likely find a way to do it, but remember, we have moved from the political to the legal. And the people that would prefer charges against President Trump had better have good legal standing to do so. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that they better have good political standing, or it'll cost them their law licenses, as it should be. Because here in the United States, you are innocent until proven guilty. And preponderance of politically charged pseudo-legal ideology is not what we put people in jail for in these United States, nor is it what we indict people for. It is absolutely essential that these people realize that. And the best statement so far that has come from that was one of President Trump's own lawyers, who said there's no legal justification for what's being done, both in New York and in Georgia. I have to agree. I haven't seen anything to the contrary. And I assure you that even though the results of this grand jury have not yet been made public, if there was firm legal standing to charge President Trump for fraud in Georgia, we would have already heard about it. Now, Fannie Willis launched the inquiry based on a January 2nd recorded telephone call in which President Trump sought to pressure, once again, more bias here, sought to pressure Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, to find more votes to deny President Joe Biden's victory in the state. Some of President Trump's most senior advisors, including personal attorney Rudy Giuliani and Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, have been among the dozens of witnesses to be summoned before that grand jury examining election fraud, false statements, conspiracy, oath of office violations, racketeering, and violence associated with threats to the election process. Let me take those one at a time. Election fraud, okay, by all means, investigate. False statements, grand juries do not get to sit in judgment of whether somebody's making a false statement or not. And by the way, making a false statement is not against the law, or we'd have a lot more politicians in jail. Let's see what else. Conspiracy, another serious charge. You've got to investigate that. Oath of office violations. Let's talk a little bit about oath of office violations. Do you believe anybody sitting in government of either party have violated their oaths of office? I sure as hell do. As a matter of fact, it's documented. That is without doubt that indeed what we have found is we have found that indeed politicians have turned their backs on the Constitution of the United States and, more importantly, not importantly, against the people of the United States and the Bill of Rights. This is non-sustainable. And the people of the United States have spoken. Did they speak as loudly as was expected? No. But is there more flim-flammery regarding our elections that needs to be investigated? Sure. Take a look at Arizona. Because as this election rolled around, we finally have somebody that has standing to be able to bring charges against a lot of what we have seen. Good luck. We'll see. Because those elections have to be right and true and fair. And once again, do you believe they were? It's okay to say yes. It's okay to say yes. I have serious questions. About that, as I believe most people do. Eddie Jones points out, Carrie Lake has guts. Yes, she does. And she has a story. And I guarantee you, had Carrie Lake been the Democrat and Katie Hobbs been the Republican, this would have already been this investigation would have already been well underway. That is the political nature of our judicial system. It's got to change. It has to change. Now, make no mistake. We have to be real about this. People are intrinsically political. To ask human beings to not be political is hoping for inhuman behavior. But what we do have to do is we have to make sure that the checks and balances in place in this nation to rein in improper prosecution are followed. It must happen. So as we get back to this story, a part of the inquiry, prosecutors have been examining the submission of an alternate slate of electors by Republicans in Georgia, one of 7 states in which officials allegedly sought to reverse the Trump defeat. Again, biased reporting. The Georgia inquiry is one of 4 known criminal investigations threatening the former president. A special prosecutor appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland is overseeing inquiries into election fraud and Trump's unauthorized retention of sensitive government documents. Well, once again, we have to point out that the idea of former presidents having sensitive governmental documents, that's murky. Would an investigation into that prove what the limits of executive privilege are? Yes. Is that a good thing? Probably. We'll see. But as far as election fraud, remember, there's been a special prosecutor against President Trump before, and it returned with nothing. Nothing. He's been impeached before, twice, to no avail. Once again, President Trump, in my humble opinion, is being punished for trying to take out the swamp, and the swamp is fighting back. In New York, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is continuing an investigation into the operations of Trump's namesake real estate business. One of the officers has been convicted already. We'll see if any others are. Also, New York Attorney General Letitia James has filed a lawsuit. It's a civil lawsuit. Typically, attorneys general handle criminal proceedings. Civil lawsuits are rare, and it'll be interesting to see how far she goes. She's seeking $250 million in penalties and other sanctions that would effectively close the Trump Organization in New York. To the benefit of whom? In November, Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed former longtime Justice official Jack Smith to manage dual investigations involving the former president, a multifaceted campaign to subvert the 2020 elections, and a separate examination of Trump's unauthorized retention of tranches of classified documents, including hundreds of sensitive records seized during an unprecedented August search of his Florida estate. I certainly would like to see maybe a few more of those FBI dawn raids on former presidents' estates. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you like to see how many, shall we say, classified documents they find there? I sure would. The actual explanation of how many of these documents are actually classified to a serious enough level to warrant all of this gnashing of teeth is somewhere south of 20. There were hundreds of documents that were classified in other ways. But by all means, find out whether or not, let's plumb the depths of executive privilege. How many of those sensitive documents were kept as souvenirs? I don't know. Within days of Jack Smith's appointment, his team issued a flurry of subpoenas to election officials in key battleground states where Trump's team waged unsuccessful challenges to overturn President Joe Biden's election. In one of its last public acts, the House Committee investigating Capitol attacks added to Trump's potential legal woes. Lawmakers voted unanimously last month to seek the Justice Department to take up a criminal prosecution of a former president based on charges to defraud the federal government, obstruction, false statements, and inciting the insurrection. Once again, if you have these things, if you have these charges and a legal backup for them, by all means, let's have a trial. Let's get out there and let's make you prove it. But if you fail, let's make sure that you step away from the obviously partisan political manipulation of American law. As a result, we'll see who ends up being taken out of office based on the findings of that real investigation and those real trials. One of the things that I have been hearing is that Kevin McCarthy isn't real sure that he wants to go ahead and release the January 6th total body of evidence. I hope that changes. I hope that changes quickly. I suppose and suspect it will. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. 817-379-2172. Elsewhere in Trump world today, like so much of recent politics in Michigan and across the nation, this according to USA Today, the looming campaign to decide who's going to win U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow's seat in 2024 is going to be defined at least in part by Donald Trump. So we'll see here. In case you don't remember, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, she is the senator that was bragging during the height of the gas price increase of how she was driving an electric car and didn't have to worry about any of those dang gas stations. Somehow in her explanation of her electric car and how wonderful it was, she forgot to talk about how she really enjoyed the 6 to 8 hour cooling of her heels in a Walmart parking lot somewhere in Michigan recharging her car. She forgot to do that. So fortunately, I'm here, so I'll go ahead and point it out. That being said, she's that person anyway. The question is this: Donald Trump. Donald Trump's going to have a lot to say. Should he have a lot to say, and who is going to take over Senator Stabenow's seat? Yes or no? And why? 379-2172. 817-379-2172, or you can go to the chat room. I have an answer, by the way. So I would say to President Trump, if you want the Republican Party to win and you believe it's your legacy and the legacy of the party, you have to let the chips fall where they may when it comes to picking a nominee, said John Truscott, a lifelong Republican and Lansing-based consultant who served as a spokesman for former Governor John Engler. The Michigan Democrats' announcement last Thursday she was not going to run for a fifth six-year term sent reverberations across the political landscape and touched off rampant speculation about how the campaign for the office will play out. Senate Republicans are expected to have a strong year in a presidential election year, and the race will also be impacted by each party's nominee for chief executive and how they are perceived. Trump's role in that, this according to USA Today. Whether it's indirect or direct, whether he wins the GOP presidential nomination or stumbles will be part of the question. Certainly, the Republican former president's endorsements, quote, didn't help much in last year's elections. Okay. Well, that's USA Today, and it's biased. However, in Michigan, his three top of the ticket candidates lost, as did his handpicked nominee for a newly drawn West Michigan congressional seat, as Democrats took back legislative control in Lansing, Michigan. That's the state government. In the U.S. Senate races in Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, his picks won primaries and then lost. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the Democrats threw an awful lot of money at Republican candidates in a successful political strategy to try to get the primaries to elect a candidate they felt that they could beat. And it worked. In the race for Stabenow's seat, the GOP will face a tougher task. It's running against historical headwinds. Only one Republican, Spencer Abraham, has won a U.S. Senate seat in Michigan in the last 45 years. He held it for a single term. And a remarkably strong bench of potential Democrat candidates, mostly women, many of whom in their own way trace their ascent to the Trump revolt in the state in 2018. Well, let's talk a little bit about President Trump's role. Should he have a strong role? Absolutely. Because that's how you do it. That's how we do it in the United States. Like President Trump, hate President Trump, what have you, as an American, you want him speaking. For better or for worse. He is the last Republican president, something the establishment Republican Party is trying to soft pedal because they believe that it's a political advantage to trash the last Republican president. That is a loser attitude. One that we'd never see the Democrats do. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Eddie, are you asking who used the word ignominious? That wasn't Hakeem Jeffries. That was me. It slipped out. It's a great word. Very descriptive. It has to do with an act that causes public tumult. It's awful. Okay, yeah, no, it was not. It was me. Yeah, every now and then those words leak out of my mouth, and I sit there and say, what I used to say when it came to stuff like that, what I used to say was there's a dictionary you should have. It's the Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary. It's a perfect dictionary. It's got all the words in it that you need. Okay, and I used to. Okay, I'm a nerd. I get it. I'm an English language nerd. I love the language and so on and so on. And as I've told you, my mother was a journalist and my father was an English major. And so words like that got thrown around the house when I was growing up a lot. All right. And I used to read the dictionary because it was fun. I learned really cool words. And believe it or not, language is power. And the better you are able to express yourself, the better chance you have of being able to, A, get your point across, and B, have that point bear fruit for those other than you, right? So for whatever that's worth. So if you want to, talk with your hands, use Bigfoot. I don't talk with my hands very much. Have you noticed that television reporters do a lot of this and so on and so forth now? I don't know what they're doing that for. Of course, the old way of standing there with a microphone. I'm Britt Hume, ABC News. Maybe I just discovered that when you do a video thing, subtlety is best. And when you're waving your hands like this, people are waving at your, looking at your hands. Let's look over here. Come on, stop it. All right, seriously? Whatever television consultant came up with that. And, oh, by the way, the President Biden had words to that. Listen to this. That's no. There was a politician in Texas. It was very interesting. His name was Beto O'Rourke. Okay. And Beto would walk around, obviously in some sort of fit of something or other and wave his arms like this, his one arm. He held the microphone with his left hand and he waved his other arm like this. What we need to do is we need to make it more possible for people to walk on feces in Austin. I wanted to make a video of it. And I wanted to make a video plaything of it, but I didn't do it. But it would have been funny. And it's like one of those weird things. It's just one of those weird things. Let's see. Field reporters have to pick up storm damage when juggling the microphone. We're here in the Hurricane Inez, and man, the wind is really blowing. Really? Maybe that's why they call it a hurricane. Yeah, this is a palm frond. It was blown into the side of my head while I was trying to do my report last hour. The only cool thing about reports like that are the really cool raincoats that people are wearing. All right, let's get back to business. I'm sorry I got distracted by the hand thing. Here, let's go back to the other camera. Tedious. Or am I just an old fuddy-duddy? I was wearing a jacket last week. I wore a jacket every day last week. People say, John, it makes you look old. Makes me look old. My executive producer said, just try a shirt and tie. Roll your sleeves up. And I went, getting back to the weather guys, guys that are sitting there going, we've got some thunderstorms going on. We're here at the Channel 58 Combat Weather Center with their sleeves rolled up and all this kind of stuff. Okay, guys, it's just a thunderstorm. Just chill out. But it could be worse. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Yeah, the downdrafts from climate change is causing the hail to fall faster. Roll up sleeves. Anyway, I'm trying to be more professional this year. Trying to be more professional. Because I was wearing polo shirts with the see, I'm using my hands. The Wells Report logo. I'm not so sure. But anyway, let's get back to business. The President of the United States finally came to the border. He flew from Washington, D.C. to El Paso, Texas. In El Paso, Texas, that had been cleaned up from all the things his policies have caused. Therefore, he didn't see any of it. Streets that were lined with people sleeping on the streets in tents were gone. Hundreds of people in that famous lot with the bridge going over it where people would stand in the shade in the summertime and then huddle together under that bridge in the wintertime trying to stay warm. Both of which absolutely miserable. As you know, I've served on that border some 9 months of my life on 2 separate missions. I've seen the human suffering that's there. I truly have. With my own eyes. And the president didn't get to see that because they cleaned up El Paso. So what did he come away with? Oh, my policies are working fine. Absolutely fine. Well, a Texas border congressman, it's normal policy when the president goes and visits someplace, they take the congressmen that are associated with those areas with them. He was snubbed. We're talking about Tony Gonzalez of El Paso. He was snubbed by the White House after a request to join President Biden on this border trip. A White House spokesman told Fox News the snub of Gonzalez was because of space constraints. Yeah, that's absolutely. As often with the case with presidential trips, we receive multiple requests from lawmakers to join the president on this trip, and we're not able to accommodate all those requests from Republicans and Democrats alike. Okay. Of those people that are Republicans and Democrats alike, how many of them are the congressman from El Paso? Our legislative affairs team has been and will continue to remain in close touch with these lawmakers. Yeah, so you can, rub their noses in it? The Texas Republican told Fox News the White House space constraints assertion for the snub was insulting. I find it insulting that President Biden blames space constraints for ignoring my request to accompany him on a visit to El Paso County, which I represent in Congress. For 2 years, this administration has pointed fingers at Republicans for not wanting to act in a bipartisan manner on border policy. It's not border policy. We don't want the Republicans to work with Democrats on border policy because, as we know, the Republican Party is simply an enabler of Democrat policy. If you like what's happening on the border now, just go ahead and do a comprehensive immigration reform bill with Democrats, and that's what you'll get for the rest of time. No, you got to do what Australia does. You have to show up in that country. If you want to become an Australian, you have to show up in that country with a job and means. And you're on probation. If you're not able to make it in Australian society, they'll deport you. That's what we need here in these United States. Immigration is supposed to be an opportunity for a country to draw the all-stars from all over the world to come be a member of that country. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trashing these hardworking people that are coming to the United States. I do trash the terrorists. I do trash the sex abusers, the sex traffickers. I do trash the drug pushers who are taking part in a chemical attack against the United States. Yeah, I trash those people all day. But what these countries in the Central American area are doing is they are losing the hardest working people in their country because of socialist policies, because there's not enough food, there's not a decent standard of living, because it's a socialist government, and that's what they do best, reduce the standard of living and have famines. And so these people are leaving. Well, sooner or later, these highfalutin socialist government officials in all of these countries in Central America, you know what they're going to be doing? They're going to be trying to find people to take the garbage out because they're all gone. There is an immigration system out there that satisfies everybody's interests. I've talked about it innumerable times on this broadcast. I won't bore you with it now. But what I will tell you is this ridiculous garbage being foisted on the people of the United States by the government of the United States is ridiculous. And how the Biden administration can sit there and blame Republicans for not having border security, just exactly what in the hell are they talking about? President Trump wanted to build a wall. He built hundreds of miles of it. And he was fought every step of the way by Democrats. I'm not being partisan. I'm reporting the news. All of those building materials laying out in deserts and various places in Texas waiting to be used. Federal government says, nope, we're not going to let you use it. Forget it. In the meantime, what's happening is that New York and Philadelphia and Chicago and LA, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., they get a few hundred immigrants and then they declare a state of emergency demanding billions of dollars to take care of these few hundred immigrants that suddenly showed up on their doorstep after they spent decades politically inviting them to show up on their doorstep. And so all of these foolish things that the Democrat Party is doing regarding immigration, like not letting the congressman from El Paso join the president, and that's common practice. It's ridiculous. And then there's something else also from Fox News. President Biden was criticized by both sides of the political aisle following his trip to El Paso, Texas, for not meeting with any migrants during his first trip to the border. CNN reporter Rosa Flores told CNN's Poppy Harlow that both Governor Greg Abbott and immigration activists raised the same question about President Biden's visit. That's why the president is being criticized on both sides, because of what he did not see. Let me show you. This is one of the migrant camps here in downtown El Paso. The immigration advocates here in El Paso and Governor Greg Abbott usually don't agree on much, but they do raise the same question. If President Biden came to El Paso to see the reality on the ground about the border and didn't come here, that's considered the epicenter of this crisis. Did he leave with a clear understanding? Asked Flores. CNN played a clip of Abbott, who said President Biden's trip was nothing but a political show. Okay. Well, that's easy. That's low-hanging fruit. After saying he wasn't going to go there, that there were more important things, and that's a quote, what in the hell was President Biden thinking when he said that? It's one of the number one issues, if not the number one issue, confronting Americans in the United States at this particular moment. Mr. President, tone deafness makes everyone look stupid, including you, sir. Something you need to stop doing. You need to stop looking stupid, Mr. President. So, Fernando Garcia, an immigration and human rights activist, said the president's 3-hour trip was just a photo op. He also told Flores Biden was not exposed to the entire immigration crisis in El Paso because he didn't meet or see any migrants. Quote, my colleague MJ Lee asked the White House about the president not interacting or meeting with any migrants, and a senior administration official told her it's because there were no migrants at the respite center at the time the president visited. How convenient. How convenient. But that was just a coincidence, by the way. Mm-hmm. But, Poppy Harlow, I checked the migrant dashboard of the city of El Paso. At the time when the president was there, there were nearly 1,000 migrants who were in federal detention. So if the president really wanted to see conditions, I kind of doubt the president would have been denied access. Harlow noted Flores' surroundings and said there were migrants sleeping on the streets of El Paso. If the president would have stopped by here, he would have seen hundreds of people. You see them here behind me, hundreds of people living in the streets of America. I should highlight, this is a city in America, in the United States. The top executive of this country came here and did not come to see this. Yeah. So once again, you got to take out the political gnashing of teeth on the part of biased journalists on both sides. There was a terrible moment when Governor Abbott presented the president with a letter as he descended from Air Force One. The president listened and looked at the letter, and then, without acknowledging the governor of the state of Texas, turned to the next guy and shook his hand. That was unpresidential. That was unpresidential. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of minutes as we get through Monday, the 9th of January. See you in a sec. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. So I just got a text. President Biden doesn't have cognitive skills anymore to know anything about anything. How come the 25th Amendment has not been invoked? The 25th Amendment strengthened by Nancy Pelosi in a bill through the House of Representatives. Why hasn't it been invoked? Well, strange you should ask that question there, Gary, because that's the same question that Fox News was asking people around the country. They weighed in on whether or not Joe Biden should run for re-election in 2024. A vast majority told Fox News he should not seek another term. Emma, who lives in Nashville, Said, I don't think President Biden should run again. I think he's too old. He's lost it, and people have really lost respect for him. David from Washington, D.C. disagreed. He has the most experience of anybody since he's been on the Hill for 36 years. It's been 49. Of the 24 American Fox News interviewed, only one person supported President Biden seeking a second term. Now, remember, this is a very, very small group of people here. Okay, you once again, this is bias on the part of Fox News. All right. One man said in Nashville, I feel he's incompetent. He can't even finish sentences. In Yuma, Arizona, he said he believed President Biden may be unfit for office. Quote, I'm not sure he's going to be up for physically or quite frankly, cognitively, he told Fox News. Biden represented Delaware in the U.S. Senate for 36 years before serving as vice president under former President Barack Obama from 2009 to 2017. The octogenarian has faced repeated criticism over whether his age affects his presidential performance. I do think a younger voice and a younger face in presidential candidacy for the Democrat Party, said Aiden, who lives in Bellingham, Washington. He voted for Biden in 2020. So there's more. Go to Fox News and look under the headline, he's lost it. We all get older. We all have more mileage, not all of us, of course, but many of us have more mileage behind us than we do in front of us. The time will come when it is essential for me to step away from this microphone. I hope it's a good long time from now, because I believe this show is important, and I believe it's something that actually provides benefit to my neighbors. But there will be a time when either I will realize it myself or my family will realize it for me and my friends and many of the people who watch and listen to this broadcast. President Biden should have finished his political career, in my opinion, as a pretty dang good, if not excellent, vice president for President Barack Obama. He should have put on his flight jacket and his cheesy-looking aviator sunglasses, and he should have gone off to the Chesapeake Bay, sat there on a beautiful deck overlooking that water and the sailboats, drinking scotch and smoking a Cuban cigar and talking about how great he is, or was. But he didn't. He didn't because the Democrat Party, failing to rid themselves of the socialist virus within the Democrat body politic, suddenly had a problem where, darn, Bernie Sanders was going to win the Democrat nomination for president. By the way, that happened in 1972. A guy named George McGovern ran against a guy named President Richard Nixon. It was the biggest political drubbing that anybody ever saw. And it was because George McGovern was a communist. And so were his supporters. They finally got their chance to run as Democrats and got their butts comprehensively kicked. That'll happen again. Because it just happens, the virus, it's like the socialist virus is an awful lot like herpes. You go for months and months and months and nothing happens. And then all of a sudden, geez. So here we are again in one of the herpes socialist phases for the Democrat Party. And yeah, they're in a position where they took advantage of a guy who really doesn't have it together mentally and is essentially a figurehead for the presidium. By the way, we heard from Susan Rice the other day. Yeah, Susan Rice showed back up again. She was out handling something or other, threatening somebody again, because that's what socialists do. If they can't convince you of doing something stupid, they browbeat you into it. They shame you into it. Or they just prosecute you. Any of that sound familiar? The answer, of course, is yes. And so President Biden is in a situation where he needs to start thinking about just exactly what he's going to do. Running for re-election? I keep talking about the practicalities of of what President Biden would have to undergo. First of all, he doesn't have the strength or the capability to run for the presidency. That's why he stayed in the basement during the COVID election of 2020. He can't do it. I mean, you think he's a bumbler now. Wait until he actually has to go to all the campaign events. And the practicality of the fact that he'd have to figure out how he went from 81 million votes to something south of 60 million is just too big a story for even the biased media to spin. Thanks very much for joining us today. We'll see you again tomorrow for another edition of the Wells Report. So what'd you think? A lot of cover is coming to hold on top of the what? Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, these young athletes that are falling on their butts because their heart stops, that's getting worse. Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right, guys. Listen, God bless you and all of you like you, damn few. But God bless you and thanks for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful evening and I'll see you again.